sit, focus. This is Oliver, and this is Oliver's roadmap to success. And you don't necessarily need to get Oliver in the shot for this is just for me. Okay, so basically, Oliver's a Border Terrier. I love his scruffy haircut. I have a Border Terrier at home, and I might actually adopt this haircut. We call it, what do we call it? Stripping, not hair cutting. Shouldn't cut actually a wire hair dog's hair. All right, so basically, he was a little bit of what I call the perfect storm. So he was under-exercised. His family was exercising him, but probably not enough. He didn't really have any rules, and he was able to tell the humans when to pet him. Also, the humans would give him a lot of attention for doing the wrong thing. So if he barked, we would correct him. He jumped up, we'd shove him or correct him or chastise him or what it is. So the more that for dogs, any attention from us is good attention. And so if we're giving the dog attention for doing the wrong things, we're training the dog to misbehave to get our attention. So instead, I went over petting with a purpose and passive training. And so for petting with a purpose is if the dog jumps up on me or one of the kids, well, first of all, when we come home, we're going to practice. I'm going to use this to distract him. I'm not giving him the treat. I'm just letting him sniff it. But we're going to use the video above this and practice that jumping exercise anytime anybody comes over. Now, the kids right now have not had their friends coming over because he's done some nipping when he's just overexcited. I don't see him as being at all aggressive. I think he's just so worked up, and he really never learned to develop any self-control. So we'd like to practice that, and when the kids come home from school, we'll practice at the back door, so do it at front door and back door. But when the family comes home, one person comes in, we're going to let him out of the kennel in the way that I showed the guardians. Instead of letting him race out of the kennel, that allows him to unleash that unspent energy. So what we're going to do is when we come home, we're going to step in front of the kennel, open the door and stand in front of it, blocking it with our feet. And then as soon as he sits, we're going to take a small step back. Or if he's settled and he's not trying to challenge, we might take a small step back. He tries to come out of the kennel, rush towards him and block it. And then take it and wait for him to settle, take a small step back, wait. Small step back, wait. And when he sits down, take a big step backwards. And then wait for him to lie down. And as soon as he lies down, then hold your hand out like this and then say, come or here, or whatever the word is. Come up with a word that means exclusively to be released from the kennel, like parole. And again, something that's a fun command word. Maybe the boys can help you come up with one of those. Now, once that first person comes in, if we have everybody else with, then we want to basically put him on a leash and have that person standing on a leash, and we're going to have the kids come in one at a time. And again, he's going to have to sit and we're going to, follow the instructions in there. I don't want to go in there in this video because we're going to cover other stuff in here. But follow the instructions there. And you should notice he's settling himself faster and faster and faster. But doing that, you'll get a lot of repetitions. And anytime he gets excited or jumps up, he steps aside, outside of his reach, turns sideways. Okay, so for petting with a purpose is if he jumps up on one of the kids, not when we're coming home, but he just jumps up, he wants some attention. And we pet him. Anything our dog's doing when we pet it is what we're reinforcing. So that would actually train him to jump up on us to ask us for attention. I'm pretty sure that's one of the things that happened in this house. So from now on, when he jumps up or nudges us or barks or demands attention, if he's demanding attention through barking, one of the things we do is a negative punishment, which is to actually leave the room and close the door behind you. But sometimes in this layout of this house, this is the room we're in, that's not very reasonable. The more we don't pet him for the wrong things, the less he should start doing those things. We'll talk about exercise here in a minute. But for petting with a purpose, so if he does this, I'm just going to stop petting. And I'm just not interested. I'm not saying anything to him. Now I could shrug him off and kind of pinch my legs together, or I could stand up like this. But what I would do is give him a counter order, tell him to sit. Sit. Then I can pet him for sitting, or I can pet him as long as I want. And remember, just say the word sit. Don't say a whole bunch of other words. But right now, the kids are basically rewarding him or retorting when he jumps up. And so that's what causes him to do it more and more. Also, when he's overexcited and stimulated, that's when he's going to be more apt to do that. So if he's really worked up, we should interpret that as that means we need to take him outside and do some exercise. I'll go ahead and talk about it here because I keep on coming back to this point. Sit. So he's probably an under-exercised dog. Fetch is a great way to exercise your dog. I also showed the guardians how they can use a laser to train him to exercise him. And remember, just because it's raining or icy does not mean that he doesn't need exercise. So start the exercise journal. Write down the date at the top and write down all the time. At 7:15, fetch 21 times. 8:30, walked 25 minutes. All the exercise that he gets throughout the day, the guardian does actually some treat hiding and some things like that, which mental stimulation, put those on there as well. Also, if he freaks out about something or jumps up or does something mischievous, we put the times of that down. After a while, we'll be able to start looking at past days and be like, hey, every time it's more than 2.5 hours before exercise, he starts getting in trouble. So we just start maintaining that, and maybe the boys, hey, once every 90 minutes, one of the boys takes him outside and fetches 10 times. And remember, for fetch, we're going to throw it and say the word fetch. When the dog picks it up with his mouth, I say fetch. When he comes it over, I'm going to hold the treat in front of his mouth. As soon as he drops the item, then I pop the treat in his mouth and I say fetch the third time. Sit. Now and put assign a grade at the end of each day, and then keep on playing with the elements, and do this for about 2 or 3 weeks, and you'll start noticing, hey, I get an A day when we get this much exercise in, and eventually you'll see a lot of this demand barking will stop. If I correct him or acknowledge him when he does this, I can stand up. But if I even yell at him to not do it, he's getting a response. That's what he's trying to do. Now, if he, there you go. So he went and looked, is there somebody else that's going to give me some attention? So remember, if he comes to somebody in the house and we don't want to deal with him, we just cross our arms and look up to the side and hold still. Become uninterested. But if he jumps up on one of the kids, the other thing they could do is actually tell him to do something else. Like, so you're going to jump up again? I'm going to hold a treat and try to lure you into doing it again. Are you going to do it now? You're not going to do it now because I need you to do it now. Oh, there we go. Sit. Sit. Now, for this purpose, we might want to have the kids carrying around 3 or 4 treats in their pocket at all times. Doesn't mean that we're going to give them to them all at once, and it doesn't have to get him just for sitting, but if I smell like I could reward that way, then the dog's more inclined to want to listen to me, be on its better behavior. And sometimes we do and sometimes we don't. And since he's a little guy, we can tear these treats in half and give him one each time. But by basically having the kids have the treats, that means that they have the potential to reward him. And then again, the kids are going to stop petting him for no reason or when he demands attention. Instead, we're going to give him a counter order. Sit. When he sits, we're going to pet him under his chin and say just the word sit. Not good sit, not his name, just the command of sit. If he comes over here and he nudges me, he's already sitting, I might ask him to lie down or ask him to come and sit over here. He just has to do something to change his state. After a while, he will come and start sitting to prepay for attention by sitting in front of you to ask for it and say, look, I'm showing you a more polite way of asking for attention by sitting. We call this manding or learning to mand. And so now we've taught him a good behavior. Make sure that we recognize and reward that. That's one of the watchwords I usually use is recognize or reward. So if somebody said recognize me right now, I'd say come, because he just came to me. I look at the dog, and whatever the dog happens to be doing, sit. That's really passive training, or it does become petting with a purpose, sit. He'll start sitting to ask for attention instead of jumping up and nudging us. And that's one of the things we'd like him to do. Now, passive training, crash, is right there. He laid down on his own. I didn't give him any command or any direction. He laid down, and within 3 seconds of him laying down, I petted him and said the word crash. I use the word crash. You can say chill or whatever word you want to use, but just be consistent. So if every time he lays down, somebody's petting him and he hears the word crash, well, then later on, after about 2 months, we say crash, and he'll lay down anticipating getting that attention. I also use passive training for teaching the dog to eat. So he's has been not a good eater, and his guardians have left the food out, and then she was leaving it for like 15 minutes, is that? And then she was taking the whole bowl away. Well, that creates a situation where the dog sees the guardian taking it away. What I do is I give the dog, I've eat something first. Right? What I do is I put the food in the bowl, and I don't let the dog within 7 feet of it. Then I eat something first. If I'm going to eat my real meal, I eat my real meal. But if not, I just have 5 or more bites in a chip or a cracker or something. Then I give the dog permission to eat. When he comes over and sniffs the bowl, he's on the clock. He has 3 minutes. As soon as he walks away, the timer expires. And I pick up the bowl, flop. That's what I do for a dog that lays on its side. And I pick up the bowl and I dump the food out and I put the empty bowl back down. It's important that he walks by and sees the bowl is empty throughout the day. There's only 6 minutes a day, 3 minutes in the morning, 3 minutes in the evening, where there's food in the bowl. That becomes a very important time because it's not very often. And so as soon as he's eating, and when he takes his first bite, I would say the command word. I say feast, grub, chow, whatever the fun command word is, that means for him to eat. When he hears that command, there's food in his mouth. So to him, that eventually means I have permission to eat. The really cool thing is when you do it, after you've done enough, you can put food in his bowl, then the family sits down and eats dinner. He lays down and waits. The family gets done eating dinner first, so they have more authority. family members need to eat first. And then he gets called over and he gets permission to eat. So he sees himself eating in the second position. That helps him reinforce that he is more of a follower. Let me see. Petting with a purpose and passive training are the two easiest things to go with every client that I work with. And if you get in the habit of doing it, every time you pet your dog, it becomes a mini dog obedience training session that you do without even thinking about it. Now I use this sort of hand motion, so if the dog's head is here, I don't go vertically up or horizontally. I go in an arc, and the dog will track it. Eventually it'll sit. When they sit, I lower it, let them lick at the treat off my hand if I have one. But if not, I always tickle under the chin, so eventually they always get a little bit of a tickle. Try to pet under the chin, never on top of the head. You can scratch or pet the dog anywhere you want except for on top of the head. But instead of saying good boy, say whatever the dog happens to be doing. Again, passive training. The dog comes to you, pet him and say come. There was a trainer that taught him to come for his name. We want the dog to pay attention when he hears his name, and not necessarily come. There might be a dangerous situation where we need him to get your attention, but also to stay. And stay would be a great thing I'd like to have the guardian teach him how to do. I teach the stay for the 3 Ds. First for duration, up to 5 minutes with me right here. Then I start incorporating distance. Then I start doing it with distractions. Does he follow you around the house everywhere you go? So eventually that can lead to separation anxiety. So what I would do is put him in a sit-stay once he masters this, and then go in the kitchen and make yourself a glass of water and come back and give him the release. Put him in a sit-stay, go change clothes, go to the bathroom, or whatever it is. So you're helping him practice doing these things while you're here. Dogs that have separation anxiety, it's really a panic attack. They're insecure when they're not near their humans at all times. Well, usually the dog goes from 100% access to the human to 0. Well, if we help the dog practice staying while we go change the load of laundry or something, and then release him, he's practicing staying while he has the comfort and the security blanket of having the kids here. That's one of the things we went over with the kennel, which he does not like. I recommended we put the kennel over here, and each one of the kids twice a day would grab a treat, go over there, toss it in there. When he goes in there, we're going to use the word fort. He goes in and licks it up, and we hear the word, and we walk away. So every time he goes in there, he gets a treat, and he hears the word fort. After a while, we say fort, he'll go in there automatically. Now, I would also recommend the guardians occasionally put when we're hanging out in the living room, put a treat in there and close the door with it closed. Or put a bully stick in there. This is something the mom should actually do before she has to leave, because he doesn't want to go in the kennel when she's leaving. Well, he probably recognizes all of the steps that you do ahead of time. You can work through that very easily. So just next time you're not going anywhere, recreate the process. Sit down where you put your shoes on. Grab your keys, grab your purse, grab your sunglasses, grab your binder, grab your iPad, all the stuff that you rather grab, and then tell him to go to the kennel and throw a treat in there. And then go put all your stuff down and sit down. So he's like, man, normally she picks all that stuff up, then she's leaving. But now, sometimes she doesn't, she throws a treat in the kennel. And after a while, the dog will start going in the kennel more and more often. The more the kids help the dog practice being in the kennel. And I showed a little bit of a kennel exercise where you're going to toss the treat, toss the treat, toss the treat, let him go in and lick it off, come out, lick it off, get it off. And after a while, what we do is we toss a treat, and when he goes in there, we silently step behind him, and we block the exit of the door, but we keep the door open. We wait for him to settle down, stop moving, then we take a small step back, left foot, right foot, and stop. If he tries to come out of the kennel, we rush towards it to block it with our legs again. And we'll do this back and forth. Remember, anytime he sits, we take a big step backwards, 2 steps only, and as soon as he lays down, then we give him permission to come out. Once he starts laying down right away, then the next step is once he lays down, now we're going to wait 5 seconds and then say parole, or whatever the word is that you can leave the kennel. And then 10 seconds, then 15, then 15, 30, 45, then 1 minute increments, and try to get up to about 10 minutes or so. Doing this in concert with also letting him out of the kennel in a more controlled manner will help him adopt more of a calm demeanor across the board. Now remember, whenever he gets overexcited or worked up, we probably didn't exercise him enough. So make sure we annotate that in the exercise journal. Also, if we're going to have some kids come over, we might want to have some friends to visit. We might want to take him to doggy daycare, or make sure he gets a big fetch session and then gets 10 or 15 minutes to relax and calm down and get his energy down before the friend comes over. And the friend and every person that comes in should be practicing that new door ritual with the leash. And what you'll see is he's going to start setting himself down faster and faster and just sitting down on his own. And after a while, you're like, oh my God, your dog used to go crazy. What happened to Oliver? Now he's all calm when we come and visit. You're like, of course, we hired doggone problems. They showed us how to fix that problem. But what we did is we recreated the situation. We do it in a controlled environment, and we help him practice flop and the behavior we want over and over again until it becomes automatic. Then we start adding in the more realistic or the real world situations. Another example of this would be having us practice eating dinner before we actually serve him dinner. So when we're eating, we're focused on eating dinner. Well, instead, we set the table, and before we actually sit down for a meal, we actually microwave a piece of roast beef. We all sit in our normal places, we cut it up, and the smell of roast beef is in the room. That causes him to want to come in. One of the rules is he's not allowed to be on the tile in the kitchen or the dining room area when people are eating food. So we do a dry run or a practice or a dress rehearsal. And anytime he crosses the line, whoever's close rushes at him. And remember, keep on rushing all the way to the enforcement point, whatever the boundary is, and stop at the boundary. And after a while, he'll sit or lie down like he did. And then once he stops protesting, then we put the roast beef away, and then we serve the actual meal. He just did the dry run. Now he understands what we want him to do, and it's easy for him to do it. Watchwords. I come up with a number of watchwords. One of them is paycheck. Paycheck means I suspect you're petting the dog without a purpose. We need to stop petting him for no reason, because only the leader dogs get petted with for no reason. So if we pet him just because he demands it or because we want to, that sends him the wrong message telling him that we're equals. And so instead, we're going to ask him to sit, lie down, whatever it is for petting with a purpose. And the more that we do that, like I said, the more that he's going to feel that he has to pay for those privileges. Also, as soon as he starts doing something we don't want, we stop petting him. And that is a really important and very underestimated or underused technique. But stopping the instant the dog jumps up or starts getting excited is just as effective as petting him when he does the right thing. So we're using both sides of the coin. Let's see, what else did we go over? The humans need to eat something first. I went through that. We went through a way for the kids to get chocolate. Do the chart, and like I said, whoever gets the most gets a special privilege or doesn't have to do a certain chore. The kids get the M&Ms or whatever it is every time they pet with a purpose or do something. But in this house, the mom is very, very organized, and I can imagine that we're going to have a chart or something and set it up and put a weekly, goal or a weekly reward. And it's just giving the kids a motivation to want to do it. And now they have the kids competing to do the focus exercise or to pet with the purpose or whatever these things are. We also went over focus exercise. And if you forget how to do that, message me. I have a bunch of videos where I can share where I go through all the details of that. But I usually do it for each person has about 12 treats. I would use the tricky trainers and cut them in half. And again, I'm a righty, so I have one in this hand. I hold it between my thumb and forefinger and then shield it by pressing against my knee. And then I make my other hand look the same way. And as soon as the dog looks up at me in the face, I raise it in my nose and go straight to his mouth and say the word focus. And then reload again so the dog knows we're playing. Don't just do it here. I'd like you to do it in different seats around the house all the time. Dogs don't generalize. They have to do things in different locations before they can actually master it. Eventually get up within a week. I would like you guys 1 second, 20 seconds for that second movement. And then we can start using that when there's, I would actually practice it in the house first to get to the 20 seconds, and then 20 seconds with distractions. Then go and practice it in the backyard. Now, when the neighbors next door have their 2 dogs that come outside, he gets all worked up and wants to go play with them. So maybe at that point, I would take him on a leash to the far side of the fence and play the focus exercise again over there. So we help him practice filtering out and ignoring the dogs. Again, one of his fundamental problems is he really didn't develop any self-restraint because he wasn't required to. The dad, when he plays fetch with him, makes him sit before he throws the ball. After a while, sit and wait a certain number of seconds. Where now he's going to have to sit and wait before he gets permission to come out of the kennel. Sit and wait for permission to eat your food. So anything that he wants to do, if we ask him to show us a little bit of structure and patience and restraint beforehand, we can help him develop more self-control. Let me see. What am I forgetting? Anything you can think of I forgot? Come. I didn't go through this with the guardians, but what I would recommend that they do is give each person like maybe 2 or 3 treats. We cut them, in half, and sit. We have kind of a nice little area in the living room that the mom has set up, and so maybe you have one person sitting here, one person sitting there, 2 on that couch, 2 on that couch. We pull up a chair, or have somebody sitting over here, and mom decides, or dad, whoever's in charge, and that person gets to point at the next person, and only one person's going to call the dog at a time. Thank you. I remember. So when we call him, before we call him, I'm going to hold my hand out with a treat in it like this, and I'm going to say, not his name, I'm just going to say come or here or whatever the word is the humans want. If the dog doesn't, so I'll show you. Can you see him?
No. Mm-hmm.
Come. The lower I go, the more it's for the dog. And I raise it over his head, and then come. Pat him under his chin. Now remember, start off with your 90-degree bend here, so your forearm is parallel with the floor. I go up over their head to make them sit. I go down to make them want to come over here to check out what I have. And I didn't there, but usually if you do this a lot, after a while, that looks like they have something. I'm going to come over to them. Okay, so a couple other things we went over. Could you hand me that? Thank you. You can toss it. So he did not like having the harness. I don't think he didn't like the harness, but he created a game. If the human pulls this out, oh, if I run away, she's got to chase me. And that's fun for a dog. Dogs like women like being pursued. So what we did is I showed his guardians how to create a conditioned emotional response. So what we did is I held it behind my back, and I'll actually demonstrate a little up here if I have a treat. So can you see the dog? So I'm just going to hold it up. He looks at it, and he gets a treat. And then I take the object away. And then this time I might hold it up here. He looks at it, and then he gets a treat. So that's the first step, is just get him to look at it. Second step is I started holding it like this, and you see he started leaning forward. He's a little tired. We've been working with him for about almost 4 hours. But eventually he has to come and touch it with his nose. Then I give him a treat. The next step is I would hold it in position where he's got to basically, I hold the treat here, and he's got to stick his nose here to get the treat, and then a little bit further, and a little bit further. And eventually he's sticking his own head through there. And again, if we want to engage with him, he needs to come to the humans, not have the humans chase him, because that's a game for him. That also puts him in the driver's seat. Now, we also did a little counter conditioning with the broom and the dust buster. So remember, for the counter conditioning, basically what I do is I'm squeezing the treat, and then he's looking at it, and then the mom came out and started sweeping. At first very slow and far enough away from him that he does not perceive it as a threat. So take note, you want to keep on getting closer and closer to him. When I'm doing counter conditioning, I put the dog into a sit, and I usually use a leash to prevent them from running around too much. But I offer the treat. If the dog gets up out of a sit or stops eating the treat, they're saying that the stimulus, in this case the broom, is too close. So then mom would take one step further away, make him settle down first, and then maybe before at 10 feet, he was worked up. Okay, now we're going to do 11 feet. And then we're going to do the counter conditioning. He's chewing the treat while he watches mom sweep at 11 feet. And we do that a couple times until he's almost bored about it. Then the mom goes away and comes back next time at 10 feet. And we gradually do this until eventually he's watching her mom do the sweeping right in front of him, and he doesn't care because we created a positive association. And then basically we can either do a conditioned emotional response for the dust buster or the counter conditioning. He seemed to respond to both of them. Normally he bites the mom when she pulls out the dust buster. It makes the room smell like everything, so he gets a little confused, and the sound is grating for dogs. And I think he just has gotten himself so worked up into a frenzy. Just like us, we make mistakes when we're overstimulated. And that's something important to remember. Anything that he's doing when we pet him is what we're amplifying and rewarding. So if he is excited and we pet him, we will make him more excited. Now, right now, if you can see him, he's very relaxed. This is a great time to pet him and say, chill, or zen, or settle is the word that I like to use. Most of us tell our dog, settle down, when they're crazy. Dogs learn through association. So the only time I hear the word settle is when I'm going crazy. Settle actually means get amped up. So when he's nice and calm like this is when I pet him and say, chill, or settle, or whatever the word is. Now we're putting it in context and makes it easy for him to remember. So I think, he didn't. It wasn't until I walked away that he actually lunged at the dustbuster. But he was so mild with both of them, I don't see any reason why you can't help him get over those fears right away. Now, when we do have kids come over, we would like to have them practice. But again, put him in a position to succeed. Make sure he's at doggy daycare or throughout the day first, and then, or that he gets a lot of fetches or whatever it is, and then the kids come in. And maybe just have one kid come in at a time, and more of a mellow energy kid, and then we want to help him practice. The Humane Society's helpline had them leave him on a leash at all times, which is a little dangerous. And I don't prefer to have him on a leash because it's a little bit, sometimes we trip over it ourselves. We use the leash for the escalating consequences of the fourth consequence if we need to. And I like the guardians to make sure they're using the escalating consequences. Remember, there are 4 steps to disagree. Hiss, stand up and turn to face him, wait for him to be stationary, take 2 steps back, pause 1 second. That's the second consequence. Third one is marching directly at the dog until the dog turns sideways or greater. At that point we stop and go to the second consequence. We pivot until the dog's stationary, take 2 steps back, pause, go back to what we're doing. And then the fourth one is putting him on a leash and stepping on the leash, in his case, about 2 feet away from where it attaches to his collar. And I wait for him to sit. When he sits, if he sits here, I take the foot that's on the leash and I slide it with the leash towards him to take the tension off of the leash. I don't tell him to sit. I wait a minute later or a couple minutes later, he lays down like this. then I very subtly take my foot off the leash. Now he's free again, but the leash is still attached. Now, if he runs around and he gets back in trouble, as he runs by, we can step on the leash again. But if a couple minutes go by and he's good, we detach the leash. It's not quid pro quo. But what we're saying is, hey, if you're going to be defiant and not listen to me, the consequence is you lose all freedom. I'm not going to yell at you. I'm not getting upset. Just this is what's going to happen. And so he's a great little dog. He's a Border Terrier. He needs a lot of exercise. He's not as anxious as my Border Terrier. So the guardian was like, is he normal? Is he fixable? He's a great dog. I just don't think that we have, the family taught him to behave in a lot of the ways that they want. Now they have the tools to know how to do this. And the mom does an awesome job of teaching people kind of a similar skill set to what I do. And so I think that a lot of this is going to resonate with her. And we got really good responses with the kids and with Oliver. So I'm pretty sure that he's going to be good. Now, if you have questions, things stop working, I want you to call me or text me. I don't charge for that. I want you to call me and let me know if you have questions. If I don't hear from you, I assume everything's going great. Last little bit. YouTube. Since he's such a smart dog, teaching dogs new tricks can boost their self-esteem. Also, commands. Do you have a hallway like upstairs? Mm-hmm. I taught my dog to back up on command, and it is very helpful. I call it retreat. So I'm walking towards my dog in a hallway, and he backs up. I use passive training and just say the word retreat. And now I can be somewhere out and about, and the dog's in the way. I say retreat, and she gets up and backs up 4 steps and then lays down. People like that is so cool. It is, because it's really easy for them to do. One last little thing, directional commands. So sometimes I'll take a treat like this. If I'm in a room and the hallway is here, I'll touch his nose with it, and I'll just toss it right outside. He jumps outside. When he licks it up, remember, anytime they get the treat, they should hear the command word after the treat goes in the mouth, right after. So then I say the word out. He comes back in, I toss another one, and I go to every room in the house and practice that. So now when we tell the dog to leave, we put it in context, and he knows how to do it. Now, since the guardian just went like this, I've been talking too long, so I'm going to wrap up this video. Let's see if we can get Oliver. Oliver, you want a treat? Come here, buddy. This is the first time today I'm actually inviting you up. This is Oliver, and this is his roadmap to success. Remember, everything you do trains your dog, only sometimes you mean it. Isn't that right, buddy? Yeah. Oh, what a good dog. Yes. I appreciate the love.